I'm sorry, my speaker wasn't on. I got it now. Can you hear me now?
Go ahead.
All right. I'll start over. My name is Evelyn Lighty. I'm anxious to talk with you and so thrilled that Marnie has invited me to be a part of this summit. All of the speakers that I have heard this past week have been just amazingly wonderful, and they have just inspired me. And I know that many of you feel incredibly inspired by what we have heard and the energy that has gone into this conference. And thank you, Marnie. Thank you so much for putting this together and giving us a chance to support each other and to know each other a little better. I want to share a little bit of my story with you. First of all, I am a counselor. I have 35 years of experience in addictions and mental health. And I got in that not of my own free will, but of God's doing, I feel like. I protested long and hard. I didn't want to do it. I wanted a better life. I wanted to be a movie star. I wanted to be somebody who could be counted. And I didn't realize that in order to be counted, you really had to know your God and believe in Him and turn to Him. So I tried a lot of things. And I've written 17 self-help books and memoirs on what it's like to be an alcoholic, because I am a recovered alcoholic. I have 42 years of sobriety. I also, in my younger days, had many mental health problems, and God put amazing people in my life all along the way to help me combat some of those problems and some of those issues when I would cooperate with Him. But I want to read to you the introduction to one of my books so that you will understand partially where I'm coming from. I share my story with the hope that openness might help give someone enough courage to search for truth and ask the right people for help in addiction, and especially alcoholism. A lot of times people will go to a counselor, but they don't go to the right one, and they don't go to the one who understands what they're actually dealing with. And people don't realize that they have a right to demand the kind of help they're looking for. So it's really important to interview counselors, to tell them what you need. And if you're not feeling happy, move on, because there are counselors out there who can help and give you what you need. Never give up on yourself, and never give up on someone you love. Don't give up on people as a whole, because God might be wanting to use you to move them in His direction. You don't know a chance word, a chance look, anything that can help move people in God's direction, and He's using you sometimes when you don't even realize it. So when I'm talking to God, I ask Him in overwhelming wonder, how could you stand my stupefying rebellion? Because I grew up a very rebellious child in an alcoholic home. My father was not only alcoholic, he was mentally ill. And it created a lot of chaos and a lot of issues for us. Many, many problems. One saving grace was that my mother constantly read the Bible, and both of my parents took me to church at least twice a week, every week. In church, I learned a lot about a punishing God, because that's what I was listening for. I listened to hear how God was going to punish me if I didn't measure up, and that's what I heard. And not only that, when I was 7 years old, my father said to me, if you fight with your brothers, God will come and He will take one of them away. And so from that moment on, I became God's adversary, and I thought I had to protect my brothers and everyone I loved from this mean, punishing God. So there was no way I was going to say anything good about him. And I certainly didn't want him to touch anybody in my family. Why, God, did you rescue me from the voices? As a young child, I would hear voices like a radio in my head, and it would play sometimes all night long. And I didn't know what they were, and I dared not tell anyone about them. So when I grew up, in resistance to God's authority, I was looking for my way, a path, some way to peace and spirituality. And my particular brand of spirituality didn't include God. It included witchcraft, crystals, shamanism, and psychics with tarot cards. I wanted peace, I wanted help, but I wanted to get it in my way, not God's way. And so my search was on. I went to lots of workshops. I spent lots of money. I dabbled in the New Age religion, thinking that that was going to save me. And so desperately empty as I am talking and hearing other people talk, and I am wondering, is this God thing real? My mother believed it, but I never did. So God brought me through alcoholism. He brought me through chemical poisoning. He brought me through car wrecks. He brought me through cancer. And he brought me through strokes. And in his amazing love, I am here today to tell you about it. But one of the reasons that I think God brought me through all of this is so that I could share my story. And he has prompted me to keep writing and keep talking and keep telling people what is actually going on in my life. Because through me, someone might hear the still small voice. God sent his son to give me the one message that could turn me around and teach me that he really is real. And with your permission, I want to share this story. When I was 9 years old, my mother was burned very badly in an accident. We had a pot-bellied stove, and there were clothes hanging by the stove. And my mother hauled the clothes out in her arms and burned her whole front, her arms, and all up and down her front. And she spent months in the hospital. And one day when my father took all of us to the hospital to visit my mother, so she could look out the window and see her kids playing on the grass, he included our hired man to go along with us. And our hired man is sitting in the car, and we are playing in the grass. And pretty soon he's calling me, and he's saying, Evelyn, come here. Come here, I want to give you something. So I went over to the car, and he gave me a Hershey. We were very poor, and a whole Hershey's bar for a girl with 5 brothers was unthinkable. Everything had to be split 6 ways. So I'm guiltily sitting in the car eating the Hershey's bar all by myself without including anyone else. And he starts to tell me in the worst possible way the facts of life. And ultimately, I listened for over an hour to things that no 9-year-old child should ever hear. And then when my dad came back to the car, this man said to me, okay, when we get back to town, because the hospital was in another area, we get back to town, I am going to wait for you outside the movie theater because that's where we will go. And we got to the movie theater. My dad gave my brother the money for all of us to go to the movies and extra for popcorn. And this man said, just walk in the front door, but just wait by the door. And after the boys go into the movie, you join me behind the theater because I have something really special I want to show you. And so I thought, all right, I didn't think anything of that really. But my dad stopped to get gas for the car and he bought me a pinwheel. And it was something, it was a real treat because I rarely got anything. And I am looking at my pinwheel. It's out there in front of me, and I'm just thrilled that I have this pinwheel. And all of a sudden, the wind grabs it and takes it out of my hand and throws it in a field. And I start to cry. And this man looks at me and he said, "You big crybaby, you should be ashamed of yourself." And I thought, all right, I'll show you. I will not meet you before the movie. So there. So we went to the movie and I walked in with my brothers and I sat down very smugly thinking, how long are you going to wait for me out there? Just wait, because I don't care, because I don't like you anymore. So when the movie was over, my dad picked us up and we went home. The man was very quiet. He didn't say anything. And I didn't think any more of it until the next day when I told the woman who babysat us when my dad was gone what he had said. And she was incensed. And that's one of my books. I put this story in one of my books because I think it's really important for people to understand that these kinds of things happen to children, and rarely do they ever tell anyone. So years and years and years later, I went to a workshop on demonic ritual abuse. And in this workshop, the leader was telling us about various things. And all of a sudden, I started really acting out and doing crazy stuff and saying stupid things. And I didn't know where they were coming from. And so the leader started to work with me. And I babbled. I babbled about how much I didn't like God. I babbled how nobody was ever there for me. I babbled how Jesus left me and abandoned me and he couldn't possibly love me. And the man said, "Evelyn, look to your right. Do you see Jesus anywhere?" And I looked and he was there. And he said to me, "Who do you think made your pinwheel fly in the field?" And I almost passed out because I never, ever, ever had told anyone that story. From that day on, I belonged to him. I was a believer and I worked very, very hard. I started reading the New Testament. I started studying the gospel. I started doing all kinds of things that I had never done before where God was concerned. And my life has been better, amazingly better ever since. And I want to talk to you now about the 10 qualities it takes to be a roaring success. And those qualities have been given to me by God, and I want to share them with you. Develop the gifts you were born with and set goals and create the life you want for yourself. I didn't really know that I could set goals and create the life I wanted for myself until I was informed that I had a self and that I was a whole person and that God will always be there for me. Have dreams and ideas and hang on to them with a positive attitude. I think the hardest thing in my life is when I let myself get negative because negative is a spiral down, and positive attitudes are the things that help me keep going. And there are different places in the Bible you can read about positive attitudes. And one of the things is do not fear. And there are a number of Bible verses that talk about fear. And I look those up and I find them very enlightening and very helpful. Be willing to go 2 steps forward and 1 step back without getting discouraged. It's really hard not to get discouraged. I've written a number of books, and many, many times I am sitting at my computer by myself when everybody else is out having fun. And I am thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I sharing this? Why am I doing this? And then I realize I am doing this because I am on a mission. And my mission is worthwhile. And that helps me spark the positive nature that this won't last forever. I will get there. I will get through this. And I have written 17 books that way. And I just finished my 18th. It's not up yet, so it's not going to be out for a few more months. Treat other people the way you want them to treat you. My mom always taught that when we were kids. It was like, do unto others what you would have them do unto you. And I had 5 brothers. I was the only girl. And we ended up being very close-knit because we did treat each other well, and we treated each other with respect. And we tried to help each other as much as we could, even though every single one of us eventually followed my dad's footsteps and got into alcoholism. We never forgot the family connection, and holidays were always a really big deal at our house. And I only have 1 brother left, but he's in recovery with me. Give to others without expectations of receiving anything in return. That's hard. I like to give things to others. And I am one of those people who feels embarrassed if you've given me something back, because so many people in our society think, if I do this for you, you got to do that for me. And we get caught up in that way of thinking. And I catch myself sometimes thinking, after all I did for you, and then I have to remind myself, I don't have any expectations of you. What I want to give to you, I want to give to you freely. Refuse to cheat even if no one would find out. That's always been a motto in our household. My mother taught that from a very early age. I went to a country school. We had lots of kids and only 1 teacher and only a 1-room school. And the one thing that my mother impressed upon us is, if you cheat, you will know. No one else might, but you will, and it will weigh you down. So pass up that and don't cheat. Develop the courage to make choices rather than having life make them for you. Early on in my life, I let life make my choices for me. I felt discouraged. I felt like there wasn't really a place for me. And so I just kind of went with the wind, went by the seat of my pants, and didn't really reach out for help or make choices until after I sobered up at the age of 40. Make a habit of considering yourself valuable and worthwhile. That's hard. It was really hard for me to consider myself valuable and worthwhile, partially because of my teachings in the church as I remember them, was you have to earn your way to heaven. You don't just get to go there. You have to do good deeds, and you have to do this many things, and you have to do that many things. And if you don't earn your way to heaven, you're not ever going to get there. And it was a wrong message. It was a fallacy. Pay attention to your spiritual needs and pursue a spiritual lifestyle. I have done that, but I did used to try to do it by other means because of my adversarial opinion of God. And when people come to me with those same thoughts, I am able to share with them, you're not alone. I had those thoughts, and God showed me the way, and He'll show you the way also. I want to share with you a poem that I wrote back in 1979, even before God answered my prayers and took me to that workshop where I found Jesus. And the name of the poem is Troubled Spirit. God, let me be strong and true. Let me put my faith in you. I tremble like a captive bird, straining, listening for your word. Please take away my fear and say my name so I might hear your love for me come through, that I might find my life anew. And let me, Lord, look back on time, being able to give up the muck and slime, remembering only what is good, and change me from a block of wood to one who believes your word is true. And oh, dear God, let me be whatever it is you wish for me. My only hope for life at all is to let you carry the ball. Take my life and set me free from needless pain and agony. Let my troubled heart be still, that I may be open to your will. The worried, lingering doubts that lurk must be dispelled to do your work. So grant, dear Lord, that I may find the lovely, heavenly peace of mind that can only come through you. And I want to let you know I found it, and I am very, very happy about that. I would also like to share with you that I have a website, and that website is Evelyn at evelynlighty.com. And some of my books are here. I'd like to show you a picture of them. This is a story of my teenage years. I was a rebellious, angry teenager, and I got into all kinds of trouble. And this is the story of my childhood years when I lived on a farm, and I started to wonder, is everybody crazy? Is the whole world crazy? Because my father's drinking kept us up in the air so much. And this is the story of my first marriage. I married a battering alcoholic, and I didn't leave until he threatened to kill me and our 2 children. And I really didn't care if he killed me, but I wanted my children to live. And this is a book about what you do if you have an addict in your family. How do you talk to them? What do you say? And this is a story of women, what we need, what we want. And this book is in 3 sections. There's a section for women on how to be your best self. There's a section for men on how to treat a woman. And there's a section in here of women's stories. And the women's stories cover the gamut from a homeless woman who spent 10 years in the streets and on the road. That is my favorite one. And other women's stories, and they're all written by the women themselves, except for the homeless when I interviewed her. I'd like to thank you very much for listening to me and for letting me share. And I certainly am open to any questions. And I would love to give you my phone number. You could call me. You will find that number on my website. Thank you. It's not ending.